Peace and blessings, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Asiya, where our mission is to educate and empower the women of our communities and the girls that they are raising. I am your host, Asiya Nasir Shahid. We have another great episode for you tonight, and we're welcoming a very special guest with us that I was introduced to by a mutual friend to talk about a topic that is specific to the African American community, in particular, the women. And the reason why I thought this was so important because I was staggered by the statistics. The statistics in talking as it relates to the theme of our show today, the fibroid pandemic. I knew, and I also have friends who have had, fibroid issues and have had to deal with that in their journey with fibroids. But when I read the statistics, they said that the African American woman is 3 times more likely to have this journey and have to deal with this particular issue. So I thought this is something that we definitely have to talk about, definitely have to bring awareness to, and was introduced to our special guest with us tonight, LaToya Dwight. Welcome, LaToya.
Hello, Asiya. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here with you.
Great, great. Just tell the audience, a little bit about yourself, so that way they kind of just know who they're talking to, what you've been up to, and just tell them a little bit about the fibroid pandemic.
Yeah, so for starters, as I mentioned a second ago, thank you so much for bringing me on your show here. I know there are several other guests that you can have at this time in this time slot, and I do not take it for granted. So first and foremost, thank you so much for welcoming me here. I really do appreciate it.
No
Secondly,
problem.
my name is LaToya Dwight. I'm the founder of the Fibroid Pandemic as well as the Run FAR 5K. FAR is an acronym for Fibroid Awareness and Resources. And basically, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a cool, dope ass auntie, I'm a best
You one of those
friend.
TTs, huh?
I know, right? I'm a loyal best friend. Um, and I'm just an ordinary woman who wants to make a difference in this world.
Wow. So you're like a boss chick, you're a mom, you're that auntie, you're that sister friend. And that is why when I was introduced to you by a mutual friend, I just thought after hearing your story when we had our initial conversation, I was like, she has to get on this. She has to be on this show. So I thought she was pretty dope, after talking to
Thank
you.
you.
So I wanted to, in particular, I wanted to ask you about the fibroid pandemic. And in my introduction, I mentioned the fact that statistics show that women like you and I are more likely to have fibroids or live with fibroids. And before we get into the big picture as it relates to fibroids, tell us how did you get involved in starting the fibroid pandemic?
Well, Asya, that's a really good question because it started along my own personal journey with uterine fibroids. So, for starters, I started noticing changes in my body that I just simply chopped it up to the fact that I was getting older. I was extremely lethargic. I was constipated for 4 to 5 days on end, pain during physical intercourse. My
Mm-hmm.
face broke out really badly, and I just didn't understand what was going on in my body. So when I started to date my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, he and I both agreed that we didn't want to have a unplanned pregnancy. So I got an IUD Marina. Well, within a certain number of years, that IUD has to be replaced. I went to go get it replaced at the time. My doctor, I was going to my OBGYN. I was going to her for about 12 and a half years. And they couldn't
Wow.
locate, they couldn't locate the IUD. So they sent me right next door in the same office building, same office space, sent me to the next door here to go get an ultrasound. And not only were they able to locate the IUD, but the ultrasound tech also asked, "Oh, how are your fibroids coming along?" And I go, "What's that?" I had no idea that there were fibroids on my uterus. So you can tell that she misspoke, and or either she spoke out of turn. So she just was kind of nervous, right? And she said, "Well, I'll let you go back and talk to the doctor." So I got dressed,
Mm.
went in back inside the doctor space. Again, this is all within the same exact doctor visit, all within the same exact doctor practice. So I went back in there with the doctor. She's sitting behind her nice cherry wood office desk, nice computers, flat screens, and I'm very cavalier. She goes, yeah, so we saw some fibroids on the ultrasound. I recommend a hysterectomy. And I
Just like
go,
that.
just like that. This is all within one doctor visit. So we're speaking maybe an hour, hour and a half. So I was really taken aback. And me, type A personality, what's that? What is a fibroid? Fibroids, those like, what is it? Is it a fibroid? Is it those fibroids? Is it sexually transmitted? Is it hereditary? Can I take the IUD out and they go away? Can I lose weight? Like, what is this thing you're talking about that
Exactly.
that makes you think I need to get a hysterectomy? And a sidebar, by profession, I'm an employee benefits consultant. So I negotiate business to business contracts with insurance carriers on behalf of employers. So we're talking, managing multi-million dollar contracts. My clients have anywhere between 500 to 5,000 employees. So with that being said, I know I'm fully aware that a hysterectomy is a major surgery. So I kept trying to probe her for different answers. And I said, whatever it is, however it feels to be in need of a hysterectomy, I know I didn't feel that way. I felt quote unquote perfectly fine. Um, so she just said to me, well, it's just like kudzu, in the medical world, there's no known cause of fibroids, but it's just like kudzu. If I just cut it away, they're just going to grow back. So that's why I recommend a hysterectomy. So this doctor who I had been going to for 12 and a half years
Unbelievable.
audaciously compared my womb, my uterus, the place where every being on this earth is birthed from. She compared it to weeds that grow outside. She compared it to kudzu. So I was so taken aback. In all honesty, I have like a slew of different emotions. I was pissed. I was angry. I was ashamed. I was scared. I was nervous. I was confused.
Confused.
And
I was about to say, I'm
yeah,
listening to you and I'm like
mhm,
so confused about this whole process
yeah,
so far.
exactly. And when I got home to talk to my boyfriend about it, that added another level of emotions, of embarrassment and confusion because I didn't have any answers for him. So he's looking at me sideways, like, "What you got?" And so I started to do my own research. It's interesting because I went vegan. I just went cold turkey vegan. And then I went vegetarian. So I actually did it backwards. I went vegan, vegetarian. I started to eat for my blood type. I did yoga, qigong. Um, I joined several different coaching programs. You name it, I probably tried it. And I eventually landed on uterine fibroid embolization. It is a minimally invasive procedure. You're in
Mm.
and out within 4 to 6 hours. And I posted on my personal Facebook page about it. And it was really kind of lighthearted because when I was under anesthesia, my husband, he's now my husband, he took a video of me before they took me in. And I was talking about the land of the Smurfs. So when I posted on my
Okay.
personal Facebook page, it was kind of lighthearted, but it was also a way to say, you know what? Hey, ladies, I don't really know about this fibroid thing, but if I went through this and came out on the other side unscathed, so can you.
Right.
And it was amazing because the amount of feedback and
The
outpour of
outpour.
support I got, the
Mhm.
outpour of support that I received was amazing. And when I tell you, it took for my cousin to say, "Girl, did you see your Facebook page?" And I'm like, "No." So I went back and looked at it, and I started to cry. And I knew that very day, I know exactly where I was physically. I knew that very day, that very moment, that this is what God has called me to do. Because I got between text messages and telephone calls and DMs, probably about 200 people reached out to me saying that was for me, that was for my daughter, that was for my sister, that was for my auntie, that was for my mother, that was for my ex-wife. I wish I would have met you 6 months ago. I probably would not be
Wow.
divorced. And
Oh, wow.
when I got home, I told my husband, I said, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. And literally, in all honesty, I almost named my company the Fibroid Epidemic. And I Googled, what's the difference between a pandemic and an
An
epidemic?
epidemic. Hmm.
And epidemic is so fitting because it's truly a global issue. And I went ahead and got the LLC, and the rest is history.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, when we talked, I mean, you told me like the gist of, what you just
Mhm.
said, but this is even on a deeper level because the actual conversation about hysterectomy came up so quickly. you know,
Oh, that
and
was
that
the
was
first
how,
and only thing. Yeah.
that was the only option that she gave you. And it's amazing that you said that. And that's why I said, this is such an important topic to have. And the mission of our whole talk show is to empower and educate the women of our communities and the girls that they are raising. And
Yes.
the reason why even this is so important for young girls, because in our conversation that we had, our initial conversation, I told you when I was 14, the experience that I had. At 14, I started to hemorrhage
Mm-hmm.
after I had a menstrual cycle, and the menstrual cycle just did not stop.
Yep.
And when my mom saw that, okay, this is getting pretty bad, and she saw that it was not stopping, she took me to a doctor, and this particular doctor happened to be an Argentinian doctor. Now, mind you, I'm 14, had never been with a male before, a virgin, meaning, and the doctor literally told my mom after an ultrasound, he came into the room. My mom, and this is when they would have you step outside because you're a minor. So
Mm-hmm.
this is about my body, but they had me step, the doctor
Yep.
had me step outside and told my mother the same exact thing that you said. Based on what we see, your daughter has a problem, with her reproductive system, and we recommend a hysterectomy. And my mother was like, "What?" Completely shocked like you. And at the time, 14, I had, my mother didn't tell me. My mother did not tell me until after the fact. And my
Yeah.
mother was like, "Oh, not my daughter." So she
Mm-hmm.
went and she got a second opinion. She got a second opinion, and she asked a couple of friends and their friends. And at the time, we were living in California. And they was like, a lot of her friends, my mother's Latina, my mother's from Panama. So she
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of friends in California that was from Mexico. And so they was like, go to Tijuana. We know a lot of doctors. Trust me,
Mm-hmm.
go to Tijuana, Mexico, and get another doctor to take a look at her. And that's what we did. We actually drove from California to Tijuana,
Mm-hmm.
saw a doctor. The doctor did an ultrasound and was like, a hysterectomy. He was like, she has a cyst. He was like, we're not going to give her a hysterectomy. First, we're going to try to obviously build up her system because I was extremely anemic.
Yep.
And so when they built up my system, I started to get iron shots and was really building up my system. And I think it had to be like maybe 6 months later, we went back for like a follow up, and literally, the doctor said my cyst had dissolved. So had my mom not listened to that doctor, yeah, or had my mom listened to that doctor,
Listen.
I would not have the three beautiful children that I have today, because that doctor recommended a virgin 14-year-old young girl, Afro Latina woman, to a young girl to get a hysterectomy. So it is a pandemic that the women not only are more likely to have fibroids or maybe have some type of issue, but
Mm-hmm.
the first option that is given,
Mm-hmm.
or quote unquote solution, is to have a hysterectomy.
Absolutely.
So when they told you to have a hysterectomy, going back to what you were saying, you didn't even know what a fibroid was.
I had no idea. I heard of the word, the term, the phrase. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that fibroids were non-cancerous tumors of the uterus. I had no idea. Now, I've heard it in just casual conversation, but I never, ever, ever had an in-depth discussion about it.
Right.
And coincidentally, once I started to speak my truth, it came out of the woodworks. I found out
Mm-hmm.
that my mom had them. She had a hysterectomy. My mother-in-law had them. My husband's godmother, my sister,
Wow.
my niece, my sisters, my nieces, probably four or five of my very, very, very close friends. And so it's just like, why aren't we having these conversations?
Right.
And I
Right.
realized very quickly, Asiya, is because it's very, very embarrassing. To your point, your menstrual cycles were very heavy. That's called menorrhagia. The medical term is
Mm-hmm.
called menorrhagia, heavy and or prolonged menstrual cycles. Nobody wants to talk about being bloody for 45 days straight. No one wants to talk about, as a 25-year-old, 35-year-old, 45-year-old, having an accident, because that
Mm-hmm.
questions your ability to care for yourself, your
Right. Right.
cleanliness, your hygiene. Like, what do you mean you had an accident? Well, yeah, I doubled up. I had a tampon and a super duper pad on, and I also had on absorbent underwear, and I still bled through my clothes in 1 hour. Nobody wants to talk about that. And
Wow.
people with fibroids, we don't look sick. Whatever that look
Right.
may be, we don't appear to be sick. I put on my social media a couple months ago, diva, because you know how many times I was called a diva? Oh, you're so picky about your food. Like, just stop being a diva. Like, you don't have to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week.
Mm,
Well, yes, I do. And granted,
because of having that.
exactly. Exactly. I mean,
But let me
granted, for the physical aspect of it, but it's so much deeper than that. So much
right,
deeper than
right.
that.
So, but when you went and you started doing your research, because I'm still not, thank God, I've never had fibroids or suffered from fibroids, but I do have a friend that did,
Hmm.
and she had surgeries, and she
Hmm.
did eventually get, I don't know if it was a full hysterectomy or a partial hysterectomy, but
Hmm.
I do know that she did get some form of hysterectomy. I do have another friend who is African American as well, who
Hmm.
has at a very young age got a hysterectomy for some of the same reasons. So when you
Right.
did your research, LaToya, and you was like, what is this fibroid? So you mentioned earlier that it's a non-cancerous, you said a cyst or
Tumor.
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 So could
Hmm.
you explain to the audience, because we do have some that are watching, can you explain to those that are watching what is a fibroid?
It's simply a non-cancerous tumor of the uterus. And it's when I say tumor, it's like a mass of muscle, a muscle mass. And
Mhm.
sometimes a fibroid tumor can be so dense, it's almost a density of a golf ball. Now, a
Mm,
cyst is completely different. A
right,
cyst is a inflamed fluid-filled sac. A
right.
cyst can burst open. They can also shrink. Fibroids can shrink, but it takes a lot more work to get them to shrink compared to a cyst. And not
Hmm.
only that, with uterine fibroids, the way that it I guess invades a woman's uterus is very, very aggressive in certain situations. So you have to be very careful about it. But as a rule of thumb, they are non-cancerous tumors of the uterus. Now, probably about 2 to 3% of fibroids do develop into becoming cancerous, though. So you have to keep a watch out on that.
Gotcha. So
Hmm.
and I know this is just a question that many might be asking, what causes a fibroid? Is that known?
How much time we got?
We got a little bit
So
of time.
the PC answer is there's no known cause of uterine fibroids in the westernized medical system. Okay. However, it is a proven fact that several items actually contribute to the development of fibroids, including a dominance of estrogen. So,
Mm,
oftentimes people think that if your estrogen level and your progesterone levels are about the same, that's not considered a dominance of estrogen, but it is because your estrogen levels should be a lot lower than your
lower.
progesterone levels. So, even if they're about the same, a dominance of estrogen still exists. And
Mhm.
estrogen is in so much of our food that we eat. Number one, dairy. Dairy foods are latent with freaking estrogen. Um, we're talking yogurt. I mean, everything you think of, just everything dairy.
Cheese.
Red meats. Red meats, they actually pump a lot of the cows with all these different hormonal chemicals to get them to develop very rapidly. That's estrogen that they're pumping
Wow.
into their bodies. Um, fried foods, sugar, the way that sugar metabolizes into our system. I
Mm,
mean, I can go on and on, but yeah. So one of the key factors in trying to, I would say, probably overcome uterine fibroids is really watching and managing your diet. Because in the medical community, there's no known cause, but it's
mhm.
been proven that by adjusting your diet, you can definitely help overcome uterine fibroids.
And that's such a great point that you bring up, because I remember growing up, like my situation was an anomaly. It was not a known thing. And that's because although there's fast foods and things like that, we were not prone to eating fast foods on a regular basis. We were
Mm-hmm.
homegrown children where you ate home cooked meals. We were more prone to eating home cooked meals. You ate Big Mama's food. You ate, in the Spanish community, Abuelita's food, and they were home cooked meals. And a lot of those processed foods, but I noticed that a lot of young girls a lot of young girls are having a lot of reproductive issues with their uterus, with their ovaries. I mean, you know, their menstrual cycles are overly painful, and a lot of them are coming up with fibroids. So the fact that you mentioned that it has a lot to do with the food, this processed food have a major factor in uterine fibroids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's another key factor that I just failed to mention. Yes, processed foods. I tell people, if you cannot read and understand the ingredients in your food, don't eat it. Now, I'm
Right.
not going to go on record and saying, oh, I eat everything natural and everything organic, because I don't. You know,
Right.
start somewhere. Start, remove one item from your diet. Just
Right.
start somewhere. And before you know it, you'll be so far down the road and realize that you're starting to feel a lot better. I would honestly say, Asiya, when I went vegan, I felt great
Mhm.
physically. The bloating, the inflammation, the pain,
Yes.
and pressure was improved tremendously. However, for me, I it wasn't working here in my headspace. So I would always have a lot of brain fog. I would have a lot of disconnect, confusion,
Mhm.
um, not loss of memory, but just, kind of losing my thoughts on a regular basis. Really just finding myself like, darn, what was that again? And it just, my wires just were not connecting for me. And
Wow.
so,
So
go
not
ahead.
only was the not eating properly affecting obviously your uterus, but it was also affecting other aspects of your body, which included clarity, focus,
Mhm.
um, and just feeling out of sorts
When I went vegan, when I went
when you
vegan,
went vegan.
when
Okay.
I went vegan, that's when I started to feel out of sorts. And
Mm,
I was told by my coach at the time, increase your plant protein, which I did tremendously. I eat a lot. I actually probably eat just as much as my husband does. I tried everything. I was vegan for about almost a year, so about
mhm,
11 months. And I lost a ton of weight. Um,
mhm.
I became almost emaciated. And
Ooh,
yeah, but I felt good. I wasn't bloated. My periods weren't bad anymore. My menstrual went to about 4 days. And I didn't have all the inflammation, but I just did not love me. So I did, I went back to eating meat and some animal products, very, very, I don't eat any dairy. Well, my diet probably consists of about maybe 2 to 5% dairy, in all
okay.
honesty. And that's
Mhm,
usually if I eat toast or something. I don't eat a lot of bread, but if I eat toast, it's usually Ezekiel bread, and I'll put
mhm.
real butter on it. I'm not going to do the margarine or the spread because that's so many other. It's like
Right.
got to pick the best of the both, worst of the two.
Mhm.
The spread and all that has so many other chemicals in it. So if I'm going to do it, I'm just going to do real butter. But for me, I don't eat any beef. I haven't eaten beef since 1998. I don't
Mhm.
eat pork. I haven't eaten pork since 1997. No,
Check.
I haven't eaten pork since I was 16 years old. I'm aging. I'm dating myself. I haven't eaten pork since I was 16. My son's 28 years
Yeah.
old right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I haven't eaten pork since what, 2003, 2004. So yeah.
yeah, mine was 1990. 1990. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
And
meats. So
no
red
fried
meats.
foods.
No
I'm sorry.
fried
Go ahead.
food. So what?
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying no red meat, or very little red meat. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have it, very little of it. No
Mm-hmm.
pork. You mentioned no
Mm-hmm.
processed foods.
No.
Dairy products is major factor that causes that. Anything else that we didn't mention that are foods that we should, as women, especially in the African American community, or the even in the Latin community, Afro Latina myself, what else would we want to stay away from that could lend to uterine fibroids?
Think of anything that is non-conducive to your health. Fried
So
foods. Fried
fried
foods are
foods, right?
horrible. I mean, sugars in just about every. If you literally monitor everything you eat, there's a ton of sugar in just about everything. I had
Everything,
one lady
yes,
tell me, no, it's not. I'm like, yes, it is. Like any
yes.
condiments you use, any condiments, you know,
Hmm.
something as simple as ketchup. I haven't eaten ketchup in, I don't know, maybe 15 years. I have no idea. I literally have no idea. But like,
I have a friend right now who's watching this, and she used to be a ketchup junkie, and and they told her to cut back on that ketchup. So I didn't
mhm.
even realize that ketchup even
Oh
was so
yeah.
condiments.
I mean, all the
Wow.
condiments, salad dressing, even mustard, even anything you could think of. Pay attention to the actual label, and you're going to be amazed. Now that I told you this, you're going to pay attention. If you go in the condiment aisle at the grocery store, just look at a bottle of ketchup. They have
Mhm.
a no sugar added ketchup, and you're gonna be like, wait,
Right.
what? But I always tell people there's a really neat app called Foodicate, like educate, but Foodicate,
Hmm.
and it can
Oh,
tell you some
foodicate.
health.
Like, so it's
Mhm.
food and educate. Foodicate.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Foodicate, like educate, but food in the beginning.
In the
Um, and you'll be amazed that it can give you some really nice, healthy alternatives to try. But yeah, but not only that, aside from food, Asia, what you expose to your body, number one, let's talk about the stressors, internal and external stressors. We can all be our worst enemy at times. We could be our own worst critic, right? Stop it.
mm-hmm.
Stop it. Because your thoughts and your words are so powerful. Even if you don't speak it, just allowing
Because
your
you,
mind, your thought process to go down that rabbit hole,
right,
that
right.
is non-conducive. That is so it can be very, very harmful. And I
To your
mean,
body.
yeah, and it takes time. It definitely, especially with the thought process, because people, if you think about it and put forth effort, you can really try to control what you speak. But the thought process, that's a whole different level. So those
Absolutely.
internal and external stressors. But when I say external stressors, I mean something as simple as your relationships, that significant other that is very toxic. Yeah, I'm touching on a couple buttons here, people. That
Yes, you
toxic
are, sis,
relationship.
but speak it.
Mhm.
We need to hear this. We need to, we need to educate and bring in awareness, which is what your whole company, the Fibroid Pandemic, is all about, is bringing in
Mhm.
awareness to this. So yes, so toxic and stressful
Exactly.
relationships, right?
Mhm.
Friendship,
Yes. That job that you've been on for 20 years and they don't appreciate you. It's okay to go out and
Mm,
try something else. It's okay.
right.
You know, I did a session a couple months ago about fibroids and stress. I think I actually just put in my Instagram stories. I think it was a session that I saved. You know how like the memories come up or something like that. I think that's what the topic was, about fibroids and stress or something like that. But to that point, oftentimes when I have conversations with people with fibroids, I would
Mhm.
say, okay, well, when were you diagnosed? And they would say, well, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Well, obviously, it took time for the fibroids to develop. It didn't start 3 to 5 years ago. It started maybe 3 to 5 years prior to that.
Prior to that, right.
So I would say, well, what was going on in your life since then? And when people start to unpack, a light bulb goes off. They're like, oh my gosh, I was going through a
They see a
divorce.
pattern. They see a pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. I got laid off. Um,
There
I
was
lost
something traumatic. There was something
something
traumatic
traumatic.
that happened. Wow.
Something traumatic. Yeah.
So I want, and again, we have to, this is why this is so important to have these type of conversations and these discussions, is because in our community, especially, when you and I were growing up, it was not the norm. Like, I know for me anyway, when my father was sick, the last thing he did was go to the doctor, or the
Oh
last
yeah.
thing he wanted to do was go to the doctor. And in our
Yeah.
community, it's that way. In many cases, it's like you can notice there's something wrong, you feel off, but yet the first go-to is not the doctor. So I would like for you to educate those that are watching now. What are some of the symptoms that they're just kind of ignoring that could be an indicator that they have uterine cancer? And this is for our young girls who may not know better, but be maybe expressing it to their parents. What are
Mhm.
some of the symptoms, for our young girls and women to look out for, that it may be, and they just need to go seek professional
Mhm.
assistance to see if indeed that's what it is?
Number one, a heavy and or prolonged menstrual cycle. That's number one. If you notice that your menstrual cycles last longer than 7 days and you are changing every hour on the hour, listen to me closely. That is not normal. It has
Mm-hmm.
become the norm, but it's very common, but it is not normal for anyone's menstrual cycle to last over 7
7
days.
days, right.
I don't care what your doctor tells you. It's very common, but it's not normal. That's a
Right.
telltale sign that there's something going on with your body.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme lethargy. I was always tired, always exhausted. And I didn't pay attention until my then boyfriend, hey, babe, how's your day? I'm just tired. And after
Yeah.
about, so he's like, you're always tired. And I was like, I know, I just worked so hard, you know, and I was a single parent. Like, if you're eating a regular balanced diet, you're not going to be exhausted to a point to where you get home off of work or come home from school or whatever, and you just eat and pass out. That is not normal.
Normal.
Number two, if you were at a point to where, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, physical intercourse is not pleasurable. You know, sometimes it's, ooh,
Oh,
it
it's
hurts so good.
painful.
Yeah, it hurts so good, but if it gets to a point where it's really painful, that's not normal because the
Right.
fibroid can be sitting at the base of your cervix, right? So it makes it pain. So if your fibroid, and let me take a step back, fibroids can range in the size of a tiny, tiny seedling all the way up into, you know, a grape, a pear, a plum, an orange, a grapefruit, to a small melon. There are some people who look like they're pregnant.
Pregnant,
When
yes.
when I when I was at my worst, in all honesty, I was asked several times, was I pregnant? Was I pregnant? And it was very offensive. I didn't even know at that time that I had fibroids. And I was like,
Right.
girl, I'm in the gym all the time. Why you asking me what's wrong with you? Oh, she hating. No. Pay attention to that. Pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, if your hair, skin, and nails start to fall out, or for me, my hair didn't fall out, it just would not grow. It didn't get
Mm.
thick, it didn't shed, it didn't get thin, it didn't break
It's
off.
just stagnant.
It just stagnant. It was just stagnant. And my nails were brittle. And my face, oh man, when I tell you my face broke out so bad. Now that's an indicator of anemia. Anemia affects
Mm-hmm.
your hair, skin, and nails. So again, if your menstrual cycles are lasting longer than 7 days and you're bleeding and you're changing every hour on the hour, that can and will likely develop into anemia. If you're having
Right.
blood transfusions, you're passing out, that is not normal. Your hair is falling out. That is an indicator that anemia more than likely does exist.
Correct.
Other things
Correct.
that people may not think about, constipation. Who wants to talk
Mm.
about that? Nobody.
Right. And who wants to tell their significant other I'm
Right.
constipated?
But
Right.
I say that all the time. And when I tell the story about when my then boyfriend and I, when we used to date, when we became exclusive, I was always tired and would always hurt having sex. And I did not enjoy it. And I remember one time, Asiya, he said to me, just suck it up. Like, you can't be that tired. And me being a people pleaser, I started
Mm.
to drink energy shots all the time. Do you know how much sugar's in those energy shots?
So you were exacerbating the situation.
Exactly, 1,000%.
Wow.
1,000%. And I
Deep.
mean, imagine going 4 days without voiding, without defecating. And then on top of that, your menstrual cycle's been lasting 45 days. Then when it finally goes off for 7 days, but then come back on, you got that opportunity of that window right there to be physically intimate. You don't want to do that. You're tired. You're exhausted. You finally feel a little smidgen of normalcy. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely pay attention to your body. The things that people don't pay attention to, like I said, your hair, your skin, pay
Just
attention.
breaking
If your
out.
doctor, yes, if your doctor wants to write you a prescription because your menstrual cycles are so bad, go to somebody else. Go to
Mm-hmm.
if they're just telling you take to get on
Birth
birth
control
control,
bills.
get on birth control because your menstrual cycles, yes, it can help with your menstrual, but what else is it causing?
Exactly.
Even
Exactly.
if your doctor prescribes you a low dose of estrogen, like I said earlier, even if they are prescribing you a low dose of estrogen, that's still feeding your body extra estrogen than what it already needs. So
Exactly. So what,
a
okay,
second
so
opinion,
if
a third opinion, as many doctor appointments you feel until you feel
like what my
comfortable.
mother did, which is what my mother did.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
what are some of the questions that a woman, that is, I don't like the word ignorant, but uneducated as it
Mhm.
relates to fibroids, and their doctor are saying some of the things that you just mentioned. Oh, I'm just going to prescribe you birth control pills. You know, use lubricants if you're having pain, because they automatically assume that that's the reason why
Yep.
you're in pain. What should a mother say to a doctor, and what should a woman coming in for herself, what should be some of the empowering things that she can say to a doctor to make her feel like she owns that visit, that doctor's visit?
That's a very great question, because at the end of the day, it is so critical that you are your biggest advocate.
Advocate,
It's
yes.
so critical that you are your biggest cheerleader. So number one, I would say, just have a very authentic, open, humbling conversation with your doctor. Number
Right,
one, I'm very concerned about my health. I am
right.
aware of the disparity between African American women and our white counterparts as it relates to different types of womb wellness issues as a whole, not even only uterine fibroids. Because this may possibly run in my family, it may possibly be hereditary.
Mhm,
Can you please do further investigation, i.e., give me an ultrasound? That's a starting
mhm.
point. They cannot diagnose uterine fibroids by a blood test. They cannot diagnose uterine fibroids. Well, they can diagnose it by a vaginal OBGYN, a pelvic exam. They can, but they cannot tell you how many you have. They can't tell you where they're located, what size they are. The most accurate test is going to be an MRI. That's going to give you
Mm,
a full view of how many fibroids there
the
likely are.
size.
Now, they can never tell you how many there totally are unless they open you up, because there could be little tiny ones hiding behind bigger ones. So the
Got
MRI is
you.
going to be the most accurate. A starting point
Mhm.
is going to be an ultrasound. But just, I would say, just be honest and, hey, listen, I'm really concerned about my health, and I would like to further investigate this, go a little bit deeper. And if you have a doctor
Okay.
who objects to that, again, it may not be the doctor for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you have a doctor that does the absolute worst
Hmm.
thing in finding out that you do have fibroids
Hmm.
and saying something like what they said to you and what they said to my mother, which is have a hysterectomy, what should a woman do at that point? Because so many of us just trust the doctor, and the doctor
Hmm.
says, well, a hysterectomy is this, and it's going to keep growing back, like they told you. It's just going to keep
Hmm.
growing back. So it's no point in, you're going to be going into surgery over and over again. Just have a hysterectomy. Why is that? I mean, for the obvious reasons, why is that the worst first alternative?
Well,
And
for
why is it so
starters,
prevalent? And why is it so prevalent in our community?
you got to understand this. I want to make sure I make a statement. I want people to understand I'm not here to beat up the doctors, okay? Because sometimes people will come to try to attack me for my words. But again, this was my personal experience. So, for one, I would say, you got to understand doctors, they specialize in what they specialize in.
Hmm.
If they specialize in hysterectomies, they're going to recommend a hysterectomy. It's very unlikely that they're going to recommend a myomectomy, a laparoscopic myomectomy, a CESA, uterine fibroid embolization, or anything else, an ablation or medication. It's very unlikely that they're going to recommend that, because that's not their specialty. So you can't really be mad at them for recommending what they special, because that's why you go to them, because of what they specialize in. However, at the same token, again, getting back to being your biggest and greatest advocate and cheerleader, it is your responsibility to make sure you're pushing that envelope. So if that's the very first and only option that your doctor gives you, like they gave me, you got to turn that light. Have that conversation. Why do you feel as though a hysterectomy is
Is
the
the only
first and
option.
only option? Explain to me why. And if the doctor gets upset, again, that may not be the
Time
doctor
for
for
another
you.
doctor. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Because there are
Mhm.
also side effects to a hysterectomy as well that they don't discuss with you.
There
That
are.
how it does change. If your sex drive, it can change the lubrication when having intercourse. The obviously for someone like myself who was 14 years old, this is a lifetime of me never having children,
You would
me
never
never being
know.
able to. Right, right. And I would have had this surgery at 14, not totally understanding the ramification of a decision
Mhm.
that my parents would have been making for me. that would have affected my entire life. So the hysterectomy is a huge thing. It is taking your entire womb, whether it's partial or a full hysterectomy. It is a major surgery. And so if they're recommending a major surgery, you're saying some of the alternatives were what? Because you mentioned a few. So I want to make sure if anyone is, looking to write these down and they think that they may have fibroids or have been told that they have fibroids, what are some of the other alternatives aside from the first go-to that many of our women encounter, which is have a hysterectomy? What are the other alternatives?
Number one, there's what's called watchful waiting. You don't have to do anything about the uterine fibroids. If you feel as though your menstrual cycles are manageable, you're not anemic, you're not passing out, you're not getting blood transfusions, they're not lasting longer than 5 to 7 days. You're not having any other issues such as inflammation and bloating and constipation and pain during sex and pelvic pressure and pain. If you're not having a slew of side effects, you really don't have to do anything about the fibroids at all. I want to make sure people are aware of that. Just because you get diagnosed with fibroids, it doesn't mean you have to now act. You don't have to do anything about them. But for the majority of people who do have a lot of those side effects and more, minimally invasive procedure, or should I say, let's take a step back, watchful waiting. Then there's what's called non-invasive procedure, something as simple as getting medication. Your doctor can write you a prescription drug to help shrink the fibroid. Simple as that, right?
Right.
Oftentimes when people are preparing for surgery, their doctor will write a script in advance for them to start taking the medication to try to shrink the fibroid down. Then you move into the minimally invasive procedures, such as like the embolization, which is what I had. I had uterine fibroid embolization, also known as UFE. That's the same procedure that Cynthia Bailey had. And basically, and I will tell you again, it's not surgery. You do not get cut. There's no cut. There's a tiny, tiny incision, probably smaller than the tip of my fingertip. Tip of my fingertip. You leave out with the Band-Aid. Now, there's pros and cons to anything that you do. So I want to make sure I'm not painting a picture like, oh, this is so grandiose of a procedure, because there's risk to everything that you do. But with the UFE, what they simply do is cut off the blood supply to the arteries that feed the fibroid. So, they are aluminum pellets. And now with new age technology, they do have pellets that do dissolve over time. When I had my procedure done, that was just new to the market and I was not willing to try it, but I was so over fibroids. I'm like, I got to do something. So that's UFE. That's an option. You're usually I was back on my feet within 24 to 48 hours. Now for me, I did have a bad reaction to the anesthesia. I think they just gave me a little bit too much because I was very sick, nauseous for about almost 36 hours. But after that, I was fine. I mean, I was back on my feet. I didn't seem like anything was wrong, but I did take it easy because I didn't want to push myself too much. So I did take it easy for about maybe 2 weeks, and I didn't go back to the gym for like another month because I didn't want to push myself too much.
Right.
Other minimally invasive procedures is you can do Acessa. Basically, that's where they're radioactive frequency. They're pretty much ablating the fibroid. It's topical, so this probably is not a really good analogy, but if you think of like a what word am I looking for? Like like a beam that goes like through your skin, right? And so basically what they're doing is ablating the fibroid through radio frequency. Then there's what's called you can do a laparoscopic myomectomy. That's getting into more of the minimally invasive procedures. A myomectomy is simply where they're cutting the fibroids off of the uterus or out of the uterus. So there's different types of fibroids you can have. It can be, on the outside of the fibroid. It can be within the inner lining or towards the bottom or hanging off like a stalk almost.
Right.
So there's different types of fibroids. So with that being said, you can have a laparoscopic or robotic myomectomy where they make a few tiny incisions and then they cut it out and you leave with very, very tiny incisions. And that's contingent upon, your candidacy for that type of procedure. For any type of procedure would be the type of fibroids that are existent, the size, the number you have and where they're located would determine what type of procedure would be suitable for you. Then you're getting into like the major surgery, your hysterectomies and an open myomectomy. The difference between like a laparoscopic or robotic myomectomy and an open myomectomy is that open, they just simply cut you open.
Mm-hmm.
The others, you have small incisions.
Right.
Now, with a myomectomy, an open myomectomy is very, very similar to a cesarean section. The difference
Mm-hmm.
is during cesarean, they cut the baby out, and during the open
They cut the
myomectomy,
fibroid out.
mm-hmm,
Right.
exactly. And,
Okay.
I mean, a myomectomy, some people, there's pros and cons to every procedure you have, right? A myomectomy, contingent upon how many you have, where they're located,
And the
your
size.
uterus can end up like almost like Swiss cheese, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when they cut them off or out, it can end up like Swiss cheese. But if you have a really good doctor, they'll know how to take care of that. And then the
Wow.
last resort, in my opinion, contingent upon your situation, the individual situation and circumstances, the final grandiose would be a hysterectomy.
But that's
Now there are,
after getting second and third opinions, doing your own research, and making sure that
mhm.
that really is the only alternative.
Yeah. Now keep in mind that there are some people who go from fibroid diagnosis to a hysterectomy right away because that may be what they need. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you truly need a hysterectomy, that's okay. I know some really dope, successful, professional, beautiful women out there who were wearing Depends for years on end. And they're 25, 35-year-olds, 40-year-olds. You would never know. They're
Right.
walking around with a
Right.
darn Depend because their menstrual cycle's so very bad. So that individual, yeah, she definitely wants a hysterectomy.
I mean, right.
And I can
Right.
understand, that makes her life,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, excuse me, it tremendously improves her quality of life. And I can totally understand that,
Mm-hmm.
but for that individual who that's your first and only option that your doctor gives you, I strongly, strongly recommend you to do your research. I mean, for me, I had UFE. I literally had 4 different doctor consultations before I landed on having UFE. And
Right.
those consultations, it may cost $100, may cost 150 or 200.
But it's
But
worth
for me,
it.
that was an investment. Yes, it's so worth
Absolutely.
it. It's so
Right.
very worth it. You're absolutely right. Hmm.
Absolutely. So you have kind of branched off. I mean, you have a wealth of knowledge. I'm just sitting here listening to you, and I'm just like, she sounds like a doctor herself. So, with you having this plethora of knowledge and, obviously going through your own journey and having to be your biggest advocate, you have now created a platform where you're advocating for those who don't have a voice or may not
Hmm.
be, don't feel like they have a voice. And you
Right.
have created not only the fibroid pandemic, but you've also started. I want you to tell the viewers about your 5 walk and why is that so important to you?
Yeah. So the Run Far 5K is a run walk, a 5K run walk. It's what, 3.6 miles, I think. I had my very first inaugural event here in the Atlanta, Georgia area, July 24th of 2021. And it's so interesting because this was a thought that I came up with pre-COVID. Back in 2018, I was having conversations with the race management team to try to launch it in 2019. Lo and behold, COVID hit and we
COVID.
had to put it on the back burner.
Yeah.
So the latter part of 2019, I started having conversations again. And it was very hard for me to get anyone to respond, to have, to take my calls, to call me back, to even consider
Yeah.
allowing me to have a venue. So I found this really nice family farm out in Powder Springs, Georgia, which is probably about 20 minutes northwest of the city. And about 4 weeks out, I had maybe about 30 to 40 registrants. And the race management company that
Wow.
I partnered with, they're like, yeah, you know, you may just want to cancel it because you're not getting that many registrants. Normally, I mean, if you get anywhere near 100 during your first race, you're really, really lucky. Asiya, I had about 150 to 160 registrants,
That's what I'm
including
talking
those who
about,
did it
sis.
in person, those who did it in person, those who did it virtual. So I'm pleased to announce that I'm having it again in 2022. So mark your
Yes.
calendars. Mark your
Yes. So when are
calendars.
you
It's
looking to have it?
Saturday, July 23rd of 2022. Same location, same place. I'm so excited because when I tell you, when I did it this year, I didn't understand how many emotions were going to come out of it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Before we shot the gun, I had a speech just welcoming everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. and a lot of emotions came out. And that was because of, that was for my mother. My mom, it's been a little over 10 years since she left this side of reality. So although she didn't pass away because of fibroids, that walk was for her.
Mm.
That walk was for my nieces who are calling me Auntie Toya. Is this a death sentence? That was for them. That walk was for me. And that walk was for every brown girl that comes behind me and is told that a hysterectomy is the only option they have. So you're damn right I'm going to fight about it. You're damn right I'm going to
Okay.
press. So when you tell me to cancel it, I'm like, you don't know who I am and you don't know whose I am. We're doing this. And
That's
when
what
I
I'm
tell
talking
you,
about. Yes.
and when I tell you, the probably the best name sponsors that you may recognize is Radio One Atlanta was one of my media partner. The Honey Pot was a sponsor. New York Life was also a big sponsor. And that was
Mm-hmm.
simply, I put together a sponsorship letter and I sent it out and they
Yeah.
responded. Now, next year, my goal is to double it. My friends and family and people who attended, they're like, you're gonna triple it. I'm like, whoa, slow down. So
I would recommend trying to reach out to Aetna. Aetna is also all about health and health awareness.
yes,
Aetna,
they
they
are.
do have a foundation, so
Mhm.
look out for them to see if you can me being in grant writing, I was like, look, reach out to them. They're in healthcare. They
I
probably
do
would
business with
actually do that.
them. I do business with them, and I'm
Great.
fully aware.
Yes.
I'm fully aware of that.
Good. Good. So hopefully
Absolutely.
there'll be a sponsor for you, next year. You
Exactly.
also, aside from your the 5K that you do, the money that you raise, what do you do with that, as it relates to the fibroid pandemic, or is the 5K for your soon to be, I mean, you've already registered it with the state of Georgia, but
Yes.
you also have a nonprofit organization that is in the process of getting its 501(c)(3), and you're really looking to push this agenda to be an advocate for those that are not able to advocate for themselves, and it's called Had the Pandemic
It's called Pad the
Foundation.
Pandemic. It's called Pad the Pandemic. And it's like a double entendre, right? Pad as
Yes.
in menstrual pads. And like, let's eradicate that damn pandemic of fibroids.
Right.
So
Right.
with Pad the Pandemic, my vision, the whole purpose of Pad the Pandemic is number one, to help eliminate what's called period poverty. A lot of people, when they think of the term period poverty, their mind automatically goes to third world countries where flies are flying around your face and your stomachs are overly bloated. While that may
Right.
hold true, there's period poverty right here in the United States. I was one of them. When I had to ration
Mm.
my menstrual products because I didn't have enough money until payday, and I had to wear an extra 2-3 hours, and I had to determine if I want to pay for my son's extracurricular activities or buy more.
Or
That is considered period poverty. You go to
right.
doctors and hospitals, your OBGYN, they're in the health community centers. They're handing out free condoms on a regular basis. Why are they not handing out free menstrual products?
Yeah.
Why? It
Yeah.
just it behooves me as to how that's even, why is that okay? So my goal
Mhm.
is to help eliminate period poverty, but also to help eradicate unnecessary hysterectomies. You and I both will be childless had we listened to our doctors. And while there's
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with getting a hysterectomy, about 60% are unnecessary. So fuck that.
Mhm.
I am fighting for this. And if I'm
Yeah.
offending anybody, I'm sorry, but I am fighting so hard because you have no idea the walk that people go through during that
Yeah.
uterine fibroid journey. It's
Yeah.
one of those situations, Asiya, where it's almost like you're pegged to be crazy almost. Like
Mhm.
you come on, you're sick again, of course. Like, yes,
You're
I don't
tired
feel good.
again. Right. You're tired
Exactly.
again. You're always tired. Yeah. Yeah. And that
It's
can
like
take
it's
a
like you're
toll.
making it up. Oh, your period's on again. It was just on for 3 weeks. It can't. Well, yes, it is on again. Matter of fact, it never went off. You know. So yeah, Pad the
Wow.
Pandemic is a nonprofit organization to help eliminate period poverty and eradicate unnecessary hysterectomies um, by virtue of providing, clean, sanitary chemical-free menstrual products. And when I say sanitary, I don't mean the Kotex and the Always and the other brands. And I'm not beating up on
Right.
those companies. I'm talking about companies that do not include dioxin in their products. Companies that do not, you know, recycle the plastic products, from recycled products through the dump.
Right.
Those are type of companies I'm not referring to.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
clean, chemical free sanitary products, because what happens is, talking about earlier, what contributes to the development and growth of fibroids, the products that we expose to our bodies are also a key contributor.
And
So,
even more so for those who are wearing tampons, if it has chemicals in it, it's a direct connect to,
direct,
yeah. So it
direct.
yeah, absolutely. So I
Mhm.
love, so if anyone is watching and they want to know more about your organization, they want to know more about when you're going to have your upcoming, because the Fibroid Pandemic LLC, you put on workshops, you have awareness seminars, and you're going to be doing the same thing with, period poverty and avoiding hysterectomies with PAD the Pandemic Foundation,
Mhm.
your nonprofit organization. If anyone wants to attend any of those, uh, is it available to those who don't live in the Atlanta area or in the Georgia area?
So with the Pad the Pandemic, I'm sorry, the Run Far 5K, the run walk that's happening on Saturday, July 23rd in 2022, you can participate as a virtual runner. Basically, with a
Okay.
virtual runner, you're going to go online, you're going to register. And what you'll do is you'll register, then you're going to go out and do your own 5K. Whether you're walking or running, it goes by the honor system. Some people, sent us pictures and emails of them tracking their time on their watch or whatever, their smartwatch. They sent pictures and stuff of them and their friends out and about, walking around the track at a local gym, at a local mall, whatever. It goes by the honor system. You do your
Mhm.
5K, you go back in and you register your time, and we will mail you your t-shirt and your finisher's medal. And then there's also a
Wow.
third, which is a ghost runner. A ghost runner is someone who's like, you know what? I ain't going to do it. I ain't planning on doing it, but here's your money. I still want to support you.
Right.
And
Right.
then you can also gift a registration to someone else. I thought of everything, Asiya. You can gift a registration to someone else. Perfect time. The Christmas time is coming up. I'm actually about to open it up for early registration. So definitely be on the lookout for that.
Great. So if anyone wants to know more information, wants to support you, actually want to send a donation or become a
Mhm.
sponsor,
Mhm.
to, like you said, gift someone, or just, for your upcoming seminars and workshops that you're going to be doing and sponsor to have girls attend, mothers attend,
Mhm.
women, single mothers or single women just in general, or even
Mhm.
married women, just women in general and their daughters
Just
want
people,
to attend,
people in
right?
general.
And, and,
People
and
in
now
general.
is it open even to males? Because you mentioned something as it related to your husband, who was then your boyfriend at the time, who was like, you're tired, and was kind of questioning, and then was questioning like, what is a fibroid? What do you got? And those kind of
Mhm.
questions. Are your seminars and workshops also open to the fathers and the husbands or significant others, to the women that will be attending, or the young girls that will be attending your seminars and workshops?
I encourage males to attend. I encourage them. And the reason why is because I did an IG live session a couple months ago, and it was me and another young lady online, and a gentleman entered into the chat, wow, I'm so happy I'm not a woman. You ladies go through a lot of issues. Um, and that was extremely offensive, but yet it was, from my perspective, it came from a uneducated lens. And I said, excuse me, if you have a mother, a sister, a daughter, a girlfriend, a spouse, a
Hmm.
auntie, a sister, friend, any female that you love, a coworker, whatever, this will at some point in your life impact you.
Right.
So you need to buckle up and be supportive as
And
much as possible.
educate yourself, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Because the
And when
only
he
way you
said
can empower
that,
someone.
exactly. And when he said
Yeah.
that in the chat, he did come back and apologize.
Well,
But
good for
I
him.
strongly, right, I strongly recommend men to attend, because this will give you a better understanding of what your friend, your wife, your sister, your daughter's going through. My
Right.
husband, he was a trooper. Girl, I can't even imagine, like, hindsight is 2020. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember those days and months that will go by, and it's like I just don't want to. I don't feel like myself. And I didn't understand. I didn't understand. And then once I realized what was happening with my body, I kept feeding him information. And he really stuck by me. He really, really did.
Wonderful.
When I tell you, this is the reason why I encourage men to attend, young boys. Because young boys
Yes.
can be so brutal. I mean, young people, period, not just young boys, but
Yeah.
when that young, 14-year-old on the playground has an accident, how
Mm.
wonderful would it be if that young boy takes off his sweatshirt and ties it around her waist because he understands, because his mom went through it.
Or
This
that
is
his
something that
mom took him to a workshop just to educate him for him to have an understanding of what that is, knowing that someday he may become somebody's husband or might become
exactly,
someone's father. Absolutely. Absolutely.
exactly.
I
Hmm.
love the work that you are doing, LaToya. This is, I mean, it doesn't even seem like it, but we've been talking for an hour.
Oh my
So
gosh, we
it
have.
doesn't feel, because there's so much information and it's so relevant. Some of us have experienced it before. Some of us are going through it right now that are watching. And so, and there are those that are watching that want to become more educated. So if they want to find you, where can they find you? Meaning your website, social media handles, where they can support you. How can we support to continue to bring the awareness of the work that you're doing?
Everything is the Fibroid Pandemic. You go online to the fibroidpandemic.com. You go on Instagram at the Fibroid Pandemic, Facebook, the Fibroid Pandemic, YouTube, the Fibroid Pandemic, Clubhouse, Fibroid Pandemic. Um, you can send a DM. Please be patient in the DMs, y'all. Y'all be some, y'all could be a bully sometimes, but please be patient in the DMs. You can send an email. Definitely send an email. And someone on our team will definitely get back to you. You can go to our website. You can. Um, I definitely do strongly recommend you subscribe to our email list, because the more we have all these events, you'll be the first one to know. Sometimes I may even send out a discount code for people who register early for whatever event I'm doing. I just did a master class last Sunday that was called Let's Be BFFs. And BFFs is an acronym
Oh,
for Become Financially Fit for Fibroids. And the reason why I did that is because I
oh,
was able to marry my insurance background with my experience going through uterine fibroids. Because a lot of the most common questions
wow.
were, I'm going for surgery. What do I do to prepare? So this just really helps you understand the dynamics of insurance. So yeah, I mean,
Absolutely. And
I
if
have
they want to
free
support
download,
you,
everything. I'm sorry, go ahead.
and if they want to support you, if they want to send a donation, is that
Mhm.
information on the website, or
It is. Yep. All of it's on the website. Absolutely.
and so if you could say that website again, the fibroidpandemic.com, right?
Thefibroidpandemic.com. You got it.
Thank you so much, LaToya. I learned so much tonight. I know the audience is watching. People are sharing as we're speaking.
Oh,
They're
wow.
sending it, they're sharing it. So it's definitely this awareness, the knowledge. And, it's not just knowledge is power, but implemented knowledge to me is what's
Mhm.
power. So we got to do something with the information that we're doing. And people are already doing it because they're sending the information and sharing it,
I love
with
it.
those. And so, I hope, so for those that are watching, mothers that are watching, fathers that are watching who have daughters, who are with a significant other, their wife, who may have heard something that sounds familiar, this is the time to have that open dialogue and open up dialogue for you to be able to see if indeed this is something that your wife or your daughter, your niece, your granddaughter may be going through, and then be
Yes.
supportive to be able to help them, allow them to be able to ask questions, allow them to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm scared,
Mhm.
I don't understand what's happening with my body, and
Mhm.
educate yourselves together
Educate.
and be there for one another. So just, a final thought. We have a comment on here from my friend Irene. She says, thanks for such great information, LaToya Dwight. Keep up the great work. Be blessed. So
Thank
yes, it's watching, and it is absolutely great information. If you had a final thought that you wanted to share with the viewers that are watching, what would you like to share, LaToya?
you. Number one, let's stop the silent suffering. Advocate for yourself, understand what's going on with your body. But not only that, let's take it a step further and understand what's going on within your family lineage. Have conversations with your grandmother, with
Mm,
your mother, with your great grandmother if they're still here, and try to get an idea of what happened. What's going on with them. Is this something that they experienced? Because somewhere throughout the DNA, it can potentially become intertwined into your DNA. So that's one thing that we
absolutely.
did touch on, I want to make sure I do mention that, and be your greatest advocate. I don't care how many second, third, fourth opinions you need to get until you settle on a decision that you feel you are most comfortable with. Do not allow anyone to make that decision for yourself but you. And the last thing I want to say before I leave here, Asiya, with Jessica Cares, I would love to have a portion of my proceeds go to Jessica Cares from the Run
Thank
Firefighter.
you. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much. I appreciate it. And the
Hmm.
mutual friend that I was speaking about earlier,
Hmm.
Radia Hutchin, she was the one, and she is a huge advocate for what you're doing as well as it relates
Hmm.
to period poverty. And so we're looking to do some things together in
Absolutely.
2022 to bring awareness, because I do work with my population, and Jessica Cares is all about the young girls and women. So definitely this is
And
something that
that's
we
what
have to continue to
we
do.
need to, those were the conversations need to start. We cannot start these conversations with 25-year-olds anymore. We need to get them when they're
Right.
12 years old, because that's when they start having those periods, and that's when a doctor puts them on birth control to try to help with those periods. So we'll have a
Mhm.
conversation. I want to definitely partner with you, because with Pad the Pandemic, soon to be a nonprofit organization, our goal is to help
Yes.
eradicate poverty. So with Jessica Cares, your target is young females, and I want to definitely help with that, if that's okay
Thank
with
you.
you.
That is absolutely okay with me. Thank you. And on behalf of our girls and the women that attend our workshops and are part of the Jessica Cares family, we thank you. Thank you so much for thinking of us. And thank you so much for coming on our show tonight to share this vital information for all those that are watching. So thank you once again. And as my friend said, keep up the great work, keep
Thank
pushing,
you.
and continue to educate and empower those that feel like they don't have a voice.
My
So to
pleasure.
my viewers, thank you for joining us for another episode of Conversations with Asiya. Tune in on December 23rd. It will be our last episode for 2021, with tax returns coming up, and we have a lot of boss chicks in here, boss moms in here that are, running their own companies. We need to know accounting tips and have our finances in order and be able to make sure that we are positioning ourselves not just to externally have our business in order, but internally have our businesses in order financially. So stay tuned for our next episode with Mrs. Wadia Muhammad, who is the financial accountant extraordinaire. So we're just bringing it to you, and that will be our last episode for 2021. So thank you for joining us. For those, if you missed it and you just joined on, there will be a replay of this on my page, as well as if you visit our YouTube channel under Asiya Nasir Shahid, you can go ahead and watch it and subscribe. Subscribe to our channel so you can see all of our past empowering workshops, and hit that notification bell so that way anytime we have our upcoming shows, you will be notified on who is attending, who we're going to be talking to, and at what time. So thank you again for joining us. And LaToya, have a great evening. Peace and blessings to everybody. See you on the next episode of Conversations with Asiya.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Goodbye.